Hi guys, welcome to another tutorial of Friends of Motion, and today we're going to have fun with painting on particles with emitters. I'm just going to use the built-in features of Cinema 4D 2023 and Redshift, but this will also work in R26. Let's dig in. To start off with, I have a dome light and an area light. The dome light is just an HDRI texture that is in the content browser. Just search for HDR, media, and I use this one, Studio 21. The area light is just a Redshift area light that's slightly above the center of stage. And make sure you are in Redshift in the render settings. I'm going to start with a emitter. So you can find the emitter at Simulate Emitter. And the size is going to be 100 centimeter in X and 50 centimeter in Y. Then we'll have 100,000 particles. 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 3. I want it to emit particles for 3 frames. So I'm going to make this stop emission 3. And the speed is 0. That way, and I can play it so you can see, I just want it to spawn particles and then it stops. Great. Now let's add our first simulation. We are going to create Simulate Forces Field Force. And this field force is really very useful. You can create almost any force with the field force, so we almost don't need the other forces anymore. Now, in the beginning, the field force was a little confusing for me because objects has fields, but then there's also fields that has fields. So it's kind of like the wording was a little confusing for me. But how I see it is that object tag is the shape of the force you want. So do you want it to go down, which gravity? Do you want it to spin? That's rotation. Do you want turbulence that I'm going to use now, which is actually a random field? So as we know, turbulence is a noise pattern, basically. And immediately out of the box, it comes with this noise type that is all the noises we know. So that is already very good. And you can also animate the noise. Now, just for those who don't know field force, when you start off, obviously you're not going to see anything. And then when you drag in, for example, I dragged in my random field. Now you'll see these little pink or colorful vector lines, and that is in the display tag. So this display tag is really just a visual representation of the field or the force. So it doesn't influence anything. It's just literally for you to see what you're doing. And it's very hard to see it in this voxel shape. So I usually just put it on 0 here, just so that it's more like a visual, 2D visual field. And if you crank out the line density, you can actually start seeing what it looks like. Also, you can maybe make the vector lines a little longer. And then let me just show you when I start scaling this up, you'll immediately see, we'll recognize the types of fields you can get. And let me also show you how these fields react with a emitter. Because remember now, I don't have any speed on the emitter. So everything, all the movement is just going to happen with my fields. I'm just going to go through a few just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Let's do one more. I think dents are always very distinct shape. Yeah, so this is just to give you a small, quick run through of what the fields look like and how they work. For this tutorial, I used the wavy turbulence. Let me just make sure. And I had it quite big. I think it was like 1,000. Let me first see how this looks. Yeah, 1,000. And then I don't want it to be very strong. So I'm going to go field force. And instead of changing the strength here, I'm just going to dial it down like 10% here. It's a little strong still, so maybe 4, 2 maybe. Yeah, just super subtle, just to get some movement. But what I'm actually going to use as a field, I'm just going to hide this field force a little bit so we can see what's going on. I'm going to use an emitter, which is pretty cool that you can actually go simulate emitter. This emitter is going to face this way, 90 degrees. Let me just do it properly. Minus 90. And I'm going to make it quite narrow because I just want to shoot particles from the side. So what I want to do is I want the particles, oh, have I the, I knew it, wrong direction. Minus 90. I want these particles to kind of push the other particles to the right. But the reason I'm not using a wind force, like usually if you just want to move them all at the same time, you'll use a solid, which is here, solid. And the solid is literally just going one direction. So you can decide if you go to the field layer attributes, you can, if it's on 1 right now, so you'll see it's going to go up. If you want to go to the right, you're going to have that on 1, this on 0, and oh, that's going to be in Z space, but let me do this around. But you get it. So, but I don't want that. I want the particles to push. So the great thing about these fields, you can actually add emitters in here. So I'm going to drag this, the second group of particles. Let's call it stuff, because we're going to start layering these particles, and it's always hard if you don't know what they're doing. So this one is push right. And they're in the field force. This emitter is the master emitter, the master particles. And also I like to just color them too. So I know I go to basic, display color, custom. Let's make this yellow. So now I know the yellow ones are pushing, and I'm putting it in this there. And let's see what that looks like. And yeah, that's also one thing that I thought, why is it going the wrong direction? And intuitively, I would say it makes sense, but you have to go here in object, click on the particles, direction, invert direction. That looks pretty good. So now one thing, I don't want these particles to push everything. I just want it to be like kind of random. So let's go to particles again. You'll see I have very little particles. It's like 10 and 10. My speed variation, I think this can go down to 22, and I also want to have a variation. But where you change the amount of pushing is actually in the layer size. So that's the radius around each particle of how much it influences the field. And I just want it little, like 6 should be fine. Let's see. Yeah, so now we have those nice strands, and that's more of a natural way of moving to the right. And that's pretty good. All right, so to get the color, we are going to need a matrix object. And the matrix object could be found here in the cloner icon, just underneath matrix. And for the matrix, I'm going to say matrix use be an object, and then the object you need to be is this master emitter. And just for now, I'm going to scale it down to 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, just so we have a nice view. I'm also going to open my Redshift render viewer, and let me move it to the left so you don't need to squint. Let's see. Oh, nothing will show up because I have to go right click, render tags, rs object. And then for now, I'm just going to say point instances in the particle type. Let's see what that looks like. Let me just click on this little dot here to focus. And that is actually a hidden camera that you didn't see. Let me just unhide these elements. I have a camera. Let me just bring that out. And I have also gonna need this donut to change my particles. And for now, I'm just going to, I have a camera with the bokeh, but let's just change the bokeh off so we don't get distracted by the depth of field. And I can just go to my layers and hide that again, so it's not too overwhelming what I'm showing. So let's also organize a little, because we're going to have our, I would say our base is this, the force field, and our master emitter and the push. So this is all what you're going to see. And then we'll have our colors, which will be, let me add the matrix also there. And I'm going to have another one that's called the colors. Cool. All right, I'm adding my donut too. So this donut is going to be my, if you look in attributes, you can change your attribute, particle attribute, to become a custom object. And I'm just going to drag the donut in there. And you'll see they will change into little donuts. It's actually a torus. I just call it a donut. You can find it here in the objects box with the torus. And the size is 3 and 2 in pipe radius. The ring radius is 3 and the pipe radius is 2. Great. Now to get this color in the matrix is, we're going to use the plane effector. And with the plane effector, you can do actually a lot. Could actually be any kind of effector, that just depending what you put in the field. But for us, we want to add a random field, and we just want to switch off the parameters and switch on the colors. And that already looks pretty cool. A little bit like Fruit Loops. And let me go to the back, to the beginning, and just play one or two frames. And this is great, but I don't actually want the color. I want like a very simple canvas. So I'm going to take this random field and just remap it to a gradient. And I already have a preset that I added. So if you click on load preset, you can either pick any of it here or you can make your own. But I do have these rich brown base. And I know it might sound like it's very boring, but it has a great variety of colors. And it's a great way of just having something plain to start off with. And I call it a canvas because we are going to paint with pixels on top of this. So this is a good base. And if I play now, let me just switch off my render view. If I play, you'll see it already has these beautiful organic lines that go to the right. So this is already a really nice base. Let's go back to the beginning. Play again, just a few of them. Nice. I'm going to hide these the yellow one and my master. Just don't want to get confused because we're going to have a few now, and if there's too many emitters, it might get messy. So let's start with the emitters. So I have 3 emitters that I created already, and let me add it at the top here. I'm going to add it into my color null, also the plane, just to get organized. And I have a red one, a blue one, and a green one. And just so you can follow along, the particles are 12 and 12 in each of them. They're all the same. 12, 12. The emitter itself is, it's kind of just random sizes I chose, but it's around 20 and 12. And I just want it small enough so when they start shooting out particles, they will still cover and they will touch the brown ones. So let me show you. And I'm just, for now, I'm going to switch off the matrices so we only have the particles. You can see what's going on. See how they just go straight? And that's very nice already. But we want to add a little bit of turbulence. So now this time I'm just going to use a good old plain turbulence that we always use. I'm going to go to objects. The scales are going to be around 33. And in each of them, it's just an extra step, but it's important. Click on the include tab and say turbulence. On a green, you're going to go turbulence, include. Blue, turbulence. And then on the other ones, you want to exclude the turbulence because we don't want them to start moving in wavy patterns. There we go. I think I've done all of them. Let's see. Yeah, see how nice they move? I think it's a little strong, so let's just move it to 2. Yeah, perfect. And it's not, they're not always going to touch, but they're definitely going to influence at some point. All right, let's switch the matrix on again. All right, so we haven't told the color, the plane effector to use these yet. So we are going to, let me open up a little because this is going to get fun. We're going to add a few things here. So let's do one at a time. Unfortunately, you have to do one at a time. Let's start with the green one. So I'm going to add it on top. Particle object. Then in the green, I'm going to put it on max. I'm going to switch off the attributes. Then I'm also going to go to remap. Change this to gradient, the color mode. I've already created a preset, but what color is green? I'm going to add green. And then very important also just to change the radius so that this is the size around the particle and how much it influences. So we want it to be small. So let's see what that looks like. Nice. I think I'm just going to move this guy just a little bit, rotate it just so that it definitely touches some of the brown. Nice. And if you find like they don't touch, just go to the turbulence and maybe just play around with the frequency. There we go. All right. So I'm also going to now do the other two. So let's do the exact same thing with the other two. We're going to go to fields. We're going to add the blue particle object, switch off parameters, switch on the color. In color remap, you're going to say, oh, that's green. In color remap, you're going to go gradient, load a preset. I have a blue one already. Make sure the layer is small in radius, so it just go slightly around the particles. And then make sure it's on max here because it's like Photoshop, and if you don't have it on an overlay or a screen, it's going to block the rest of the bottom. You can't see through it, so you have to be able to see through to the bottom. So let's say max. Let's view that. And here's now where you have your artistic eye and you can move it around, make sure that enough blue is touching. You can even move it a little forward if you feel needs to be more prominent. Nice. And then now let's do the last ones. Red, put it in, particle object, switch off the parameters, go to the red, go to color remap, gradient, you know the deal. I'm just going to keep going. Now I click the red option, layer, 3, make sure it's on max. And now you have all your colors. And with the red, I think I might just also move it. And you can even crank it up if you feel there's not enough particle action. This is now really where your artistic eye is coming in. If I put more particles, it will just be bigger sweeps of color coming in. Nice. Now let's do the last thing, and this is pretty cool. It is called, let me go back to my plane effector fields. So the last thing is just to blend the color so they feel like paint. And that is this freeze field. Switch on the color. And the setting should be on average. Auto update radius 2. And let's see. Oh yeah, it needs to be on max. Yay, it works. Okay. I'm always happy when it works because I'm always worried, oh, what did I do wrong this time? There's always a checkbox you forget. Nice. All right, so let's do one last view. Make sure it works. Nice. It almost looks like Cheerios that turns into Fruit Loops. Let me do a few more renders. See how it influence, and you'll see that as you start playing, and this should be the fun bit. I know it looks like a lot of work, but you should just spend some time in here and you'll see anything. Even if I just change this to add, for example, let me show you. It completely changed the way it looks. It's brighter, or sometimes I don't even know what it would look like. It's just sort of a surprise. Like look at that nice pink that comes in that I didn't expect. Very cool. So let me just switch on my bokeh. To get this tag, you just right click and go camera tags, RS camera. And then you can get the bokeh, and now you can find a really cool angle. if you press Alt and drag with your mouse, you can kind of gauge the cock radius, which is this radius here. I think it's cock radius, or maybe it's COC radius. And just for kicks and giggles, let's add some type in there. Do I have type? Yes. Just because, you know, as a motion graphics designer, you probably 60% of the time you need a focal point, either type or a product or something to communicate a message. Yeah, there we go. Oh, and one more thing I completely forgot. I need to show you how to bake these particles, because you won't be able to scrub through your scene. You'll see it will get all crazy. Ooh, that's actually cool. But if you want something that's more predictable, all you need to do is go to each. Unfortunately, you have to do it on each one. So go right click and go Shift or Option C. It's kind of bringing up. This is a very useful little search thing that you can literally type in anything, and you're going to go bake particles will just come up, and you go double click, and this should be very quick. Now I'm going to go Shift C, bake particles, and then I'm just going to quickly go through all of this. And this way, if you're going to render it out, you won't have any surprises. And now the proof in the pudding is to scrub through, and you can scrub back and forth and it will not have any issues. So there you have it. I hope this tutorial are bringing you some inspirations of what you can do with emitters. I was definitely inspired when I found out you can use emitters in your fields. My first tutorial, I used Vertex color fields that using emitters, and if you haven't seen that one, feel free to hop on. It's basically using Vertex color fields to paint on glass in a way. This is just a different approach, but same method. So once you have these nailed down, you can just imagine the power of what this could have. And this is with using no materials. Isn't that just cool? All right, well, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.